Hi, friends. Hello, the world. Welcome back to this Complaint Free Life podcast. And as usual, I'm having different topics to talk about with my amazing guest. And today we have Sarah Harris. Sarah, would you like to introduce before I get into the topic discussion?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me today, also. It's really great to be here. So, yeah, I work in the field of international development. My name is Sarah Harris, as Asil has said, and I've worked in a variety of organizations over more than a decade. I also have a background in meditation, so
Oh, very
that's
good.
maybe also relevant for today.
Yay, amazing. And the reason why I requested Sarah to come to this podcast was to talk about discomfort because I saw in one of your descriptions of you, or introduction rather, that you were willing to fight for injustice, whatever the discomfort it takes, right? So something similar.
Yeah.
And it really resonates with me because I feel like we are somehow in a world where we're not comfortable with discomfort. At least this is my impression. Maybe I'm generalizing it, of course, but therefore I thought that it would be great to dedicate this 30-40 minute conversation solely to the topic of discomfort. And reflecting about it, Sarah, for me, what came up was that discomfort is such a great feeling to recognize and to do something about if we want to grow further in our lives, if we want to set boundaries, or if we want to get rid of things. So I just categorize it into these broad topics. In other words, if we want to go to the future, we need discomfort. If we want to know what our boundaries and values currently, we need discomfort to recognize. And if we want to look at the past and decide what to get rid of so that we're not burdened, then we need to know what the discomfort is and how and what to do with it. So therefore, having that in mind, tell me your experience of discomfort. How comfortable are you with discomfort?
Oh, I think I'm just like anyone else. I don't like discomfort. I think it's only over time and with, kind of life experience, that I've come to see really the benefit of discomfort
Yeah,
and what we can learn from it, you know?
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, I think our lives today, our world today is kind of designed to be more comfortable, right? We
Yeah,
have all kinds of entertainment online. Everything is made easier. There's,
yeah,
takeout dinners.
yeah,
All these things are kind of designed to help us be more comfortable and avoid like some, yeah, awkwardness or just discomfort of different things, right? So maybe we need ways of training ourselves, right, to actually
yeah.
experience discomfort when it's useful for us.
Yeah, absolutely. We were also talking, Sarah, with you last time, where, every emotion, every feeling gives us a message, right? So
Yeah.
they are the ways of for us to find out what's going on within us. So they're all indicators. Like, I always use the analogy of in the car, you have this yellow button. If
Mhm.
it lights up, means something is wrong with the car. So you need to check it.
Mhm.
And it's a bit like feelings, I find, is the same role that we need to check what's going on. But I find also that, as you were saying, that we often are so good at suppressing or ignoring for in the name of comfort.
Mhm.
It's easier that way, right? It's not only easier but less headache. We think that we just ignore it and then shove it under the rug, and then once it's so crucial, then we really need to look at it. Maybe then we will look at it, but otherwise we don't. So the question, I guess, is how do we be okay with it, and how do we learn its messages? So what is your experience? So what do you do with it? So you are feeling it, right? It's a
Mhm.
vibration in our
Mhm.
body. We're feeling
Yeah,
it. Then what do you do with it?
definitely. No, that's such a good point because I think we do kind of practice kind of pushing it away, trying to suppress or just ignore or gloss over it. And, if it's important information that's actually coming to us in the form of emotions or a sensation in the body, something like that, then eventually it could build up and that could have consequences. So I think one thing that I've noticed that's really important in the case of discomfort is just, I guess, creating some space around it. So it seems to me that one of the obstacles or challenges that we face these days is really just that we're so busy. We're constantly going, and then that kind of like pushes us and makes us want to push other things away so we can just keep going, and make our goal, reach our objective. But yeah, I guess we have to see this information that's coming, this feeling of discomfort in whatever form, as information that could help us, along the way. And maybe it's telling us that we're on the way to the wrong goal even, so like it might be a very relevant speed bump that's coming up. So creating that space seems to be crucial so that we can actually like open it up, allow that feeling to unfold, and kind of like see like what is it actually telling us, like, what is that feeling really, where is it coming from, what has triggered it, and sort of and I guess different ways of doing that. I think sometimes for some people journaling could be really good. Sometimes just like space, like taking a walk, fresh air, doing something completely different, like not really trying to think about it or like unpack it sometimes also helps, just so that it kind of opens up. Which is where also meditation could come in, if you just do some meditation for a little bit and then maybe journal afterward, or but I guess these things all have their own timeline also, so that's kind of important to acknowledge.
So I like that creating space idea, and I think for me the best way to do would be doing it regularly, obviously, because I think if we don't do it regularly, we tend into this habit of, okay, I have to get this through, or I have to look into what's happening and then get it over it and then go to the next thing kind of it. It's not like that. So instead, I think it really needs to become a routine of checking with ourselves and seeing how we're feeling. And also the other important piece I've noticed is that as soon as we start asking questions of why am I feeling it, then we get into our head and explaining, and that's not always helpful. And the reason why I say that is because I think emotions and feelings need to have their space to express themselves. So in other words, they need to go through our body without explanations or without reasoning why that's happening. So in other words, all we need to do sometimes is just feel it. And feeling it becomes so important, but also difficult because we're not trained to do that. It's a bit like, I think, is with meditation, right? When we start, we have all kinds of thoughts coming over, as if like to say, I'm going to disturb your meditation process. And that's important, that we just sit there and observe. And observe our bodies and then see what's happening within our bodies, rather than trying to explain it. And then the explanation can come later, and it's important that it comes. But first, I feel like all we need is just let the space for the feeling to come through. And without layering, without judging, without saying, oh, you shouldn't be feeling this, or it will be okay, or whatever the case may be that we explain to us, we don't necessarily need to do that in that first phase. We just need to experience it. And once we have that, then I think it becomes so clear, at least in my experience, once I experience feelings, then my mind becomes so open to understanding what's behind this discomfort. So, for me, for instance, knowing that feelings generated by thoughts, obviously there is a thought triggered by, and we need to look at the thought. But if we are looking at the thought, we are more like analytical. And the analytical part is necessary, but that does not have to be the first thing. That's all I guess I'm trying to say.
I think you're absolutely right.
Tell me.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right about that. And it's just making me think of in the meditation tradition that I come from, we talk about dropping the storyline, you know?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's kind of like you have this thing running in your head about like this person who did this thing or said
Yeah.
this, you know, and it's usually something external, right? That's happening to
Yeah.
you or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So dropping that kind of first level, like very surface level kind of, you know, reaction.
Yeah.
And like you say, just feeling it. And I really like also what you said about the physical aspect, because I think our
Yeah.
bodies hold so much wisdom actually.
Yeah.
And that's something as professionals we're kind of trained to forget or ignore, you know,
Yeah.
and just like stay in our heads. But indeed, like that doesn't get us very far. In fact, doesn't allow us to go to
Exactly.
those deeper layers. So
Exactly. I think oftentimes we have this misled conception that all decisions need to be taken on rational level and all this needs to be on the head and not on the heart and this kind of thing, right? But for me, I mean, doing this work now also professionally, it's very difficult to separate the two because the way that I see it is that all of our thoughts have manifestation in the form of feelings in our bodies. So if we cannot feel something, that means we already need to be checking why we can't feel certain things. So it means that we're also not letting our bodies to feel what's there to feel, and that may lead to numbing eventually, which is not a good thing to have. So that's why this myth of everything needs to be on the head level is, I don't know, I don't want to sign up to that. So that's why it's important that whatever is in the head manifest in the body, and we check with the body what's going on. And once we know what's going on, then we can decide what to do with it. So yeah, so I think that's just an important piece. And the other piece I think is that always, I think, knowing that discomfort is there for a reason. Right? Because we often think, like, for instance, this morning I was sad. And then all of a sudden my brain is like, no, you can't be sad. You have all these things to do.
right.
Right? It's like, I don't know, like you, like at work, I used to have the same feeling. I'm like, no, I need to not think about this. I have all this work to do. I can think about it later when I go home, which of course I won't, because once I go home, I'm dead tired and I don't really want to do these things anymore, right? So that's why today I actually told myself that no, if I'm sad, I'm gonna be sad. And and the thing is, it doesn't even last that long, but suppressing it and ignoring it lasts actually longer, ironically. So that's why I think knowing that every feeling needs to send a message and we want to know why, and therefore there is the reason for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. And it's just striking me in this conversation that that also is kind of like doing this differently, doing things differently is kind of a radical act, actually.
Yeah.
Because we are in this culture, this kind of dominant culture, if I might say, like dominated by, Northern folks or,
Yeah.
Europeans, Americans, right, who have this very particular kind of culture and like value system about what we should and shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a radical act to say, like, no, I'm not going to follow along with that.
Yeah.
I'm going to be actually a full human being, acknowledge my full self.
Yeah.
And then I think also just like, yeah, sometimes I'm telling myself lately, I have to expect this kind of discomfort because I know that I'm working in a context, in a world, in a sector where there is a lot of injustice,
Yeah.
where things are not going well.
Yeah.
So like feeling uncomfortable is completely healthy and normal, right?
Yeah.
So it's good
Yes.
to make space for that, to
Yeah.
be able to stay healthy and to be able to stay engaged, like you said, so that we don't become numb, because
Yeah.
indeed we need to keep showing up. In order to keep showing
Yeah.
up, we need to have that resiliency and like self-care,
Yeah.
to allow ourselves to continue to speak out or to continue to, yeah, show up in whatever way it is day to day. And like
Yes.
suppressing this or kind of glossing over it, it's just, we're really kind of missing our own like strength and wisdom that we could
Yeah.
otherwise be bringing to the struggle that we're in, and the work that we're doing
Absolutely.
day to day.
Absolutely. So I'm just imagining, if we all individually knew how to use our emotions
Mm.
in the most powerful ways, meaning that let let them direct us in the ways that we want to fight for injustice, right? We want to stay healthy and listening to our inner wisdom. We want to make decisions that feels good for us and not
Mhm.
just intellectually or analytically it makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm imagining what a world we would create, the world
Mhm.
where our uniqueness truly come out,
Yeah.
right? Instead of us all trying to fit in so that we don't lose something or we don't lose recognition or we don't lose approval, which I mean, I've been guilty myself so many times as well, that not really saying what's important, even though it made me uncomfortable. I mean, when I was reflecting on this discomfort, some of the things came out from my previous employment. When I started, we were working in emergency, and there was this colleague of mine, a male colleague, and he was commenting something like, I he was saying weird things to a driver in front of me,
Mhm.
saying like, I hope that Asel and I will have babies or something. And I was at the time, I realized that it was such a worse form of harassment that I could experience, and
Mhm.
I knew that at the time I didn't know what harassment meant, by the way, and it was like 10 years ago, and I think in those days maybe we didn't really name things in the right way, like we're doing now. But I'm just remembering that how it made me feel, and if I had been good at recognizing how and what my feelings were telling me, then I would actually file a report and
Mm.
report on him.
Aha.
But I didn't. And the reason why I didn't was because I was new and I thought, okay, maybe this is how things are, right? Sometimes we also think that I don't really know. I mean, I only started 5 months ago and I have no clue what's happening. And maybe these people who have higher positions than me, they can do whatever they want. So there were so many dilemmas that I led myself believe rather
Mhm.
than believing my feelings. And of course, that lesson taught me a lot of what not to do in the future. So, it helped me set my boundaries. It helped me set what I'm allowing to do, people to do, or not allowing to do. So that was a good lesson. But then I'm just saying that even without the knowledge as such of what a harassment is, what
Mhm.
I could do in terms of reporting, even without those knowledge, my feelings were there,
Yeah.
and they were there to tell me that this is not right.
Yeah.
And I just want, to highlight with this example, I guess, how much wisdom we have through the emotions and feelings coming that actually don't even need any knowledge to support it. I could
Mm.
even act on that feeling alone without knowing anything.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that example. It's really powerful, I think.
Mm.
Yeah, it's
So
really
I just want
powerful.
to encourage that, all of our, especially new humanitarians or new people working in the development, right? So who may be saying like, oh, I don't know the policy, or I don't know what to do and how to report injustice or how to report misconduct. You can always start from that feeling of what's happening and what is it telling me to do. And you
Absolutely.
can start relying on that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think that's right. Relying on that, trusting that, really trusting
Yeah.
ourselves. And it comes from, I think this is maybe also just tied to a sense of really like self-worth, like
Yeah.
I am worth, it is worth it for me to spend the time to really get to know myself. I have that wisdom, right? I
Yeah.
have that, confidence that what I am experiencing is valid and is
Yeah.
relevant and is, trustworthy.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important because, again, we live in a world where like some people's values and experiences are valued more than others. Like, let's be honest about it,
Yeah,
you know? So yeah,
exactly.
so important.
Yeah, so I love that, trusting yourself. And, one of the things that I really want us all to develop the skill of, what I call listening to our inner wisdom on a regular basis, like wisdom meditation, with yoga that we do, right? We tend to do those things often, and they are, supposed to help us mentally and physically, and that's amazing. But I think there is also this piece missing where we're really going inward the whole time. So not outward to looking for information or looking for other people's opinion or looking for who says what and what's right and what's wrong, but rather looking inward to what's right and what's wrong within us or for us individually. And then, like you were saying, that trusting that more than anything else out there. And once we let our this inner wisdom be the compass of leading us to where we want, I think we never make a mistake. I mean, mistake in a sense that we don't go wrong with it. But oftentimes I'm seeing it more and more that knowledge alone is not enough.
Yeah.
And knowledge is good information, but we need to know how to use it. But the best way we can use it is if we check with ourselves if it aligns with us or not. And if it does, then amazing. If not, then what's our inner world is telling us.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you make also about having this be a practice, right?
Yeah.
Because we go through so many different kinds of training in our career.
Yeah.
But yeah, oftentimes the world is kind of training us not necessarily to pay attention to those signs and signals that we have in our emotions, in our bodies, everything. So it really is important to actually set aside time and to develop a practice, whatever that may be, that helps and supports that. Because I think in this sector, in this world, we are constantly in a situation of we have so much input, right?
Yeah.
Action, constantly acting, interacting, making decisions and judgments. So there's but that sort of phase in between where we kind of reflect and like complete the cycle is oftentimes missing. And I fear that might be linked to some kinds of experiences of burnout or, people just, going through really tough times personally. And of course we need people to be as healthy and resilient as they can, engaging.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the things that this reflective exercises help is, at least in my case, it helps me feel always being in charge instead of being dependent of other things or other external circumstances. And oftentimes I think that feeling of depending from others or external circumstances make us feel like not free, and therefore it leads us to so many consequences. Like one of them might be a burnout. And I think the key there is to develop ourselves a system or a structure where we are always telling or seeing for ourselves that we are in charge of actually what's happening around us. We want to create that life for ourselves and not just think that, oh, I can't do this and this and this because of other people. And we get into that tendency so often that in the end we feel exhausted and we don't really have time for ourselves. We don't prioritize ourselves. And then we tie our self-worth to other people's behaviors, which unfortunately lead to even more suffering, right? So that's why whenever we are having these reflective moments of checking with our inner wisdom, I feel that we gain that clarity that we can decide to do whatever we want to. We can follow whatever we want to. We can create what we want to because we can rely on ourselves. And that's the best source of power that we can have. And whenever we're relying on ourselves, more, then we know that, there's nothing we cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I resonate with that a lot, because I think that's, that's a challenge that I really recognize in myself as well, where I would tend to get into just a pattern of reacting, right? And just reacting, responding to whatever's going on, kind of going with the flow, accepting. But I think there is like a real, I don't know, in a way, a subtle shift just between like really taking your seat and feeling that, okay, I can make a decision. It's not that everything outside of me dictates what's going to happen next, right? Like I'm in kind of the driver's seat. I'm the one, here present, making the decision of what I'm going to do next. And just owning that, and feeling that you own that and take up space and just,
that's so true. Yeah, so owning that is so crucial, I find, because I wanted to speak to that, because sometimes people ask me, I want to make this transition, but I'm not really sure, and I feel like I may regret it. I have such a comfortable life or comfortable career or whatever, the stability that I have created for myself, right? So, and that's understandable. So in other words, I don't want to really go for discomfort, even though deep desire is telling me that I should go for that discomfort. And in that moment, I feel like we're putting ourselves in a situation as if all of this does not depend on us. But we should always remember that discomfort is part of the growth as well, meaning that whatever decision we're making to transition, to change, to make difference, because that's what we want to, discomfort is inevitable. It has to be there. And thinking that it won't be there and I will comfortably go from this to another one is a bit like misleading and lying to ourselves, and that's not necessary. So that's why if we're going for the discomfort of changing and making things differently and growing, then we need to expect it to be there. And also, it's far more important to honor that desire that's coming up within us to do something else rather than suppressing it, because then we will eventually create the situation where we then keep telling ourselves, no, I can't do that, or I didn't do that, and therefore we're not happy with our lives. And that's when all this other emotions that we don't desire keep coming back. So that's why it's important that we honor that desire within us, even if discomfort is waiting for us. And it's important that discomfort is there, otherwise we wouldn't know the difference. Otherwise, everyone would be going for whatever they want, and then we would all be having an amazing life. But somehow that's not the case. And the reason, I think, oftentimes is because people are afraid of discomfort.
Yeah. No, I was thinking indeed about fear as you were talking. And so when you said afraid of discomfort, I thought, that's it, and are we going to make the decision to kind of live from that space of fear, like fear of losing whatever we have, versus like living from a space of inspiration, or from a space of, just genuineness, being true to like what we really feel we're called to do in the world,
Exactly. Because I think what happens when we do and when we live out of fear is we are automatically constraining ourselves. And we're sending ourselves the message that says, I'm not really trusting myself, or I'm not really capable, or I don't really honor my truth or my desires. Therefore, I'm just going to continue doing what I do because that's known for me. And whenever we do that, we get then eventually to the feeling of stuck. And the irony of that is that we are putting ourselves into the situation and we don't want to recognize that we're putting ourselves into the situation, and therefore we keep suffering from it. And whenever I say this, probably for many people, it's like, no, I'm stuck because of this and this and this and this. And I hear you. But imagine if you really trusted yourself, if you trusted all of your abilities to create whatever you wanted, would you really be feeling stuck? I don't know, everyone needs to answer their own answers to this, right? But I'm just wanting to believe that human beings are so capable of anything they want to do in life. We just need to believe and trust that and do things out of that trust instead of believing the fear, instead of leading the fear, let the fear lead our lives, which then brings to all the sufferings that we may not necessarily want.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes me back to something you said earlier on, that, you know, if we're kind of fighting things, if we're kind of resisting, right, it tends to draw things out and make it last longer.
Yeah.
So I was thinking also about some exercises that I did that are part of a system called social presencing theater, all about using the body for just kind of exploring. And so one of the exercises we would do is indeed about being stuck, right? So you just take the physical posture of like, think of what is that thing that is stuck, or just start to feel it in your body, like what is stuck, and take that physical posture, right? And one thing that our teacher was telling us is that usually when things are stuck, like the stuck thing wants to sort of move or evolve in some way, right? Like stay that way. So usually what we would do is like really feel that feeling of like, this is what my stuck really feels like physically in my body. And then allow it, you know, after feeling that fully, because I think that's the important thing, right? First, really get to know it, get familiar with it, you know, don't push it away. Own it. But then allow it that space to like shift. It's interesting how like physically your body might not move in the way you thought, right? If you sort of let go and don't try to control the situation. And that can also give some interesting information about, what is this telling me then about that situation, you know? What did I notice? That kind of thing.
Exactly.
Just to take it to a little bit deeper level, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. And maybe last that I want to touch upon the discomfort versus the past, or getting rid of things. And I see that also often that we carry a lot of the burden with us from the past of, you know, what's supposed to happen, what didn't happen, and a lot of regrets probably, right? So a lot of that we carry with us a long time. I mean, I was one of them, and I continue dropping off some of the burden, and I feel like discomfort could play a good role in this, to recognize what is it, that heaviness from the past that we continue carrying, that we want to get rid of, meaning that we want to offload, we want to forgive, we want to let go of things. Because if we don't do that, I think that also has such a limiting power on us, because we are human beings who tend to rely on the past a lot. Because we tend to say, oh, because of the past, I can't do this, or I shouldn't be doing it, or I will be disappointed, or whatever the case may be, right? So we tend to rely on the past. But whenever we're not letting go of those heaviness of the past, or we haven't processed the past, then that will always be dictating how we live our current life, or how we build our future. So that's why discomfort, recognizing any discomfort from the past that feels like something not comfortable, something that's heavy, something that's painful, really look at as an indicator of how we can let it go, how we want to process it. You know, visualizing it, like you were saying, is also a beautiful thing. Or simply, in my case at least, I tend to just give space in a way of holding the part of body where it feels heavy, where it feels pain, and how we want to say goodbye to those pains and let go and forgive people around us who we want to forgive. So this is, I think, also where discomfort can play an important role to tell us that something is not right. You should look at it. Right. So that's why I think we've covered discomfort from different perspectives, and also trying to convince everyone who's listening to say that really pay attention to all of your feelings. And I think one of the things that I teach as a life coach is that the skill of not fearing any emotion.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a skill. And the reason why I say it's a skill is because we're just not trained any other way. It feels like we need to retrain our body to the original mode. I mean, original because we all human beings, we have all this capacity to process feelings. And I think we've been socialized in so many different ways to not do that. I mean, at least in my case, I was raised to not show many emotions because it was considered not good, right? So, and maybe many people have other socializations, but I see more and more that we're so good at suppressing or ignoring our emotions. But I want to help people teach how to feel their emotions without judging, without evaluating, without explaining, but just feeling it. And once you do that, then, and every one of us is capable of doing it. And that's what I want to help people understand. Because then we will have all this clarity. And once we know that we don't need to fear any emotions, then we can do anything we want. Because in the end, there will be another emotion, right? We fail, there will be another emotion. We achieve, there will be another emotion. So it becomes so much easier to live life, I find.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so empowering. Just like even hearing you talk about this gives me a sense of like just fullness and power and ability. Yeah, to just own our lives and like really
Exactly.
take responsibility instead of sort of
Yeah.
being, subject to whatever comes along.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just has, it has a really good feeling in my body.
Exactly. And that's
Yeah.
what we want every one of us to experience, right?
Definitely.
Experience this enoughness,
Yes.
experience this worthiness, like we talked about,
Mhm.
experience this wisdom that we all have and hold, and get this wisdom more to outside rather than keep inputting ourselves with more information. I mean, that's also helpful sometimes, but I think we have so much treasure, like Dr. Murphy would say, we have so much treasure within us that we're not looking for. So,
Yeah.
so I think it's amazing that we look for that treasure within us. That's, I think, what we wanted to do. And don't fear discomfort, read it.
Yeah, it's actually like our ally along the way, like we won't
Exactly.
get there without that information, without that input. And indeed we can trust it. We can trust
Yes.
that that is going to tell us when something is going on that we need to look into further.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Sarah, thank you so much for this
Thank you so
amazing
much.
conversation. It's been my pleasure, absolutely. And I think I will be able to release this even today so that
Oh,
people
wow.
can start listening and
So quick.
reflecting. And yeah, and because I really want to get this type of messages out to people to say that, it's time to trust ourselves. It's time to not fear any feelings. It's time to recognize and value those feelings rather than spend so much time on getting rid of them or doing
Mhm.
something negative with them. So that's why it's easier and more cost effective and
Mhm.
sustainable to listen to those feelings rather than fight the consequences.
Takes so much energy to fight them, actually.
Yeah,
So
exactly. It's
much more
just that
energy.
in the moment maybe it feels easier to do that,
Yeah.
but that's not, it's actually easier once we get to know it. It's easier to experience it than doing anything else with it.
True.
So
We do have to practice, so.
yes, exactly, please do practice, and we just, practice makes it better anyway. Thank you so much, and
Thank you.
have you all wonderful day.
You too.